Hi, I'm Joey Only. This week on the COMEDEOROLOGICAL Report, a lot of talk about Ukraine because what else is there to talk about?
Well, whether it's hot, whether it's cold, whether it's hot, Frankie's got the weather we've got. Wait a minute. Well, whether it's cold, whether it's hot, Frankie's got the weather, whether or not. There it is.
Hey, Joey Only, I'm doing great so far. I'd like to introduce to his guest, Fred the Bear. Special guest, Fred the Bear. Hi, Joey Only, how you doing? I'm doing great so far, Joey. How was your day, Joey? I'm doing great so far. I'm doing great, Joey. How was your day? I am Fred the Bear. I live out in the woods. Joey Only's a great guy from Wells, British Columbia. Joey, you better watch out for grizzly bears up in the mountains somewhere. See you soon. Bye for now. That's Fred the Bear.
Good morning, Prince George, and good afternoon, Winnipeg. You are listening to the COMEDEOROLOGICAL Report. The COMEDEOROLOGICAL Report, that's when you put comedy plus meteorology together and you can sort of stir it around, you get COMEDEOROLOGY. It's this thing that Frankie and I invented and Brandon Houck decided he'd come along on board for. We talk with our panel of COMEDEOROLOGISTs every week about our new found study, our new science that we've invented. You're hearing us on CFUR 88.7 FM in Prince George every Saturday morning at 10 a.m., repeats on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. And then, of course, all of you listeners in Winnipeg, I hope the fund drive worked really well for CKUW 95.9 FM, trying to raise $60,000. I'm pretty sure they'll still take your money if you have some money you want to give to them. So you call the station. I don't even know the number right now because I'm in a logging camp 200 kilometers west of Quesnel, British Columbia. I'm not even anywhere near Winnipeg, but that's how the show goes. For all you meteorology students, this is course required. There will be tests in class on the things we say here on this show. You are required to listen if you want to be a real weather lunatic like ourselves. I'm Joey Only, the Caribou Weather Dude. You can find me on the YouTube, and you can also find this guy on the YouTube, Frankie MacDonald.
Frankie, the weatherman. Frankie, the weatherman. Who?
Frankie!
Who?
Frankie!
Ladies and gentlemen, Frankie!
He's over in Sidney, Nova Scotia. Frankie, how has been your week so far?
Right now, it's really cold and windy in Sidney, Nova Scotia. So right now in Halifax, they're bringing a lot of snow in Boston, Massachusetts tomorrow. It's going to bring a lot of freezing rain. New York City and all these places. It's going to bring really cold temperatures. It's snowing in Ontario right now. It's going to bring really, really cold temperatures up around northwestern Ontario. It's going to bring cold temperatures in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, even in British Columbia, West Coast, including Washington State, Oregon, and California. It's going to turn really hot again next week. That's going to cause Santa Ana winds next week. That's going to trigger a whole lot of fires next week in the state of California. Then it's going to bring a lot of Alberta clippers next week all across the eastern United States and America. And there's supposed to be a lot of rain in Vancouver on Sunday, February 27th and Monday, February 28th. It's going to turn stormier than normal in Vancouver, British Columbia, Seattle, Washington, Portland, Oregon, and surrounding areas with lots of rain. Over in South America, they're bringing a lot of thunderstorms and rain up around Brazil, Venezuela, Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia, and all these countries. In Europe, they're bringing a lot of wind over in England and very cold temperatures. UK, they're snowing up in Scotland as of right now. Over in Ukraine, it's really, really cold in Ukraine right now. It's so cold near the Russia border, Ukraine. It's really cold as of right now. We got cold temperatures in Ukraine. It's not that storm in Ukraine at all. They're bringing a lot of snow and rain in Italy. It's going to drive all the cold air all the way down to southern Italy. Even Greece and Albania and all these countries, and Turkey's going to get cold next week too, all the way down to Syria, Israel, Jordan, and all these countries. Even Israel's going to get snow next week. And Lebanon and all these countries. Over in Japan, they're bringing a lot of really cold temperatures in Sapporo, Hokkaido, Japan, Tokyo, Japan, Kyoto, Japan. They're bringing a lot of snow in west coast of Japan. It's really cold in South Korea, North Korea, Vladivostok, Russia, and Beijing, China, and all these places. The really cold temperatures right now bring a lot of thunderstorms and rain in Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, Papua New Guinea, and all these countries, even and down in southern Africa, there's a cyclone just hit Madagascar, Africa. They're bringing a lot of thunderstorms. Uganda, Kenya, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and all these countries, Angola, they're bringing a lot of thunderstorms.
Here comes the story of the hurricane.
Right now, there's supposed to be another cyclone hitting for somewhere in Madagascar, Africa, sometime in March. In Southwest Pacific, like Australia and New Zealand, they're bringing a lot of rain in. East Coast Australia, thunderstorms and hail. There's a really warm temperatures up in North Island, New Zealand, with the chance of showers up in Auckland with hot temperatures there right now. And in places in New Zealand, Antarctica is getting daylight as of right now because Antarctica is starting to get some darkness right now. Antarctica is getting some daylight as well.
Yeah, I just noticed it was 6:45, and it wasn't dark yet. I mean, it was getting dark. Night was upon us, but it certainly had this feel of like, oh wow, like this is the lightest. And it seemed like only 3 weeks ago where we were sitting in camp at 8 in the morning looking out the window and it was still pitch black. And now we're leaving by 7 and there's daylight happening. So it's changing quick here in Canada, and that's a great thing, isn't it? When does spring start, Frankie?
Spring starts March 20th in Northern Hemisphere. Fall starts on March 20th in Southern Hemisphere.
And it seems like by some of the weather we're looking at
in Australia, water goes clockwise.
Some of the weather we have
in Australia, water goes clockwise.
Yeah, it does. Seems like some of the weather we have coming to British Columbia.
British Columbia Sunday and Monday.
That really looks to me like a bit of a. I just sort of have this feeling like that spring pattern is already beginning. You know, it's much like the fall pattern, obviously off the ocean. The cold waters and warm waters start to mix. Things get a little more angry, a little bit more moisture is available, and starts to precipitate.
I just found out images in class tonight. She's gonna be there later. She's in class tonight.
Excellent! Can't wait to see her. Of course. And Frankie, have you been making videos? If you're listening to the voice of Frankie MacDonald, the world famous YouTuber, weatherman in Sidney, Nova Scotia, Frankie, what kind of weather videos have you made this week? What kind of videos have you made this week?
I did a snowstorm video for Nova Scotia. I got over 44,000 views. Plus, I did a snowstorm video for Boston. I did severe underrain warning for southeastern Australia, and I did another video called Guy Tries to Eat 50 broccoli and lettuce at once.
You. That poor guy. I guess he's had too many cheeseburgers, right?
That was my own idea. I just pretend to eat lettuce and broccoli. In the video, I just pretend to eat.
Yeah, but I mean, the guy, he's been eating so many cheeseburgers for years and things like that now he's starting to eat broccoli and lettuce.
In the video, I was pretending to eat lettuce and broccoli in the video. That's all. I was just doing my own thing, my own comedy, pretending to eat broccoli and lettuce. It's pretend, not real. It's pretend.
I know, I get that, Frankie. I totally grasp that. Just saying, the character, the guy, he's always eating cheeseburgers and stuff, right? So is this like a new health kick for the guy?
It's a hybrid.
Okay. Right on. Tell me about what podcast you're on this week, Frankie.
Sobo Radio at 8:10 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time. That's 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
And you're on Gary and Dino this
weekend? Radio at Max Fields.
Oh, yeah. You were on Gary and Dino this weekend, of course.
That was my interview before you.
Oh, nice. Who else were you on with this week?
This weekend, somewhere in the world. Did you hear about that? Ukraine is having a conflict with Russia.
I did hear that, and I see that Peter Galanko has just joined us from Virginia
I hope Michael Sanikov is all right.
So I do want to ask Peter tonight all about this, because I know that you're going to have some insight into it. So stay tuned, everybody. Right after Brandon Houck is coming Peter Galanko with some perspective on Ukraine. Of course, Frankie and Pete are both friends with Michael Sanikov, who's been in Kiev and has apparently been trying to leave, I guess.
He's in Kharkiv. He was working in Kiev earlier last year, but he is from and his family lives in, and he's currently living in Kharkiv. I'm pronouncing that a little bit wrong, but that is
Kharkiv, yeah.
One of it was Kharkiv, Kiev, and Odessa were the three targets of the airstrikes yesterday. So he was woken up by the artillery shells, which were targeting the nearby airfields. Russia basically bombed all the airfields in Ukraine, so they were targeting the strategic military infrastructure of Ukraine was primary targets. So it's a very uncertain situation for the people living there. He was telling me that he couldn't buy gasoline and his bank account wasn't working, so he just bought food with the money that he had. A lot of people today in Kharkiv, I saw the news, there's bomb shelters, or they're using subway stations as bomb shelters and that sort of thing. But it came to as a shock, even though they're near the border and the crisis has been ongoing all year. Like the earlier, Russia just acknowledged their recognition of certain regions as being sovereign from Ukraine, but that was sort of them going forward with attacking Kharkiv, Kiev, and Odessa was a little bit beyond what was expected. It seems like they just keep pushing it further to see what they can get away with, is my opinion on.
I do want to stop you because I want to spend a lot of time talking about this tonight, and I do have questions I want to ask you. So I just want to cover our Canadian weather here with Brandon and then come back to you about this. And I just see GB has just, Gabriel Berardo, welcome to the show. He just stepped in too.
Yeah.
So we're getting a bit of a cast of characters back on the show, and that's great. But yeah, Peter Galanko, he's going to have some good insight from what he's been hearing from Michael Sanikov, of course. But we do want to talk about the storm pattern that's coming to British Columbia next week. We do want to talk about the extreme cold and when is the end of that for the prairies. Of course, everyone in Winnipeg at CKUW wants to hear about their weather for next week. The show is being recorded on the 24th of February. So that's obviously you're not hearing it. Any news you're going to hear in this show on the radio, at least. If you want to tune into my YouTube channel, Joey Only Caribou Weather Dude, you can hear the show when it first comes out on Friday mornings. So we're recording on the 24th of February, and those of you in Prince George will hear it on the 26th of February, and those of you in Winnipeg will hear it on the 28th of February, which I think is near the end of the month or something like that. Brandon Houck, tell us, you just were very, very sick, but you're back, and you're okay now.
I am back.
Hopefully I don't choke on popcorn here.
I am feeling great. I'm feeling like myself again. Last week, if I was on the show, you would have seen snot dripping out of my nose, and you would have also seen me sneezing 24 times during the show, as I think I sneeze about 24 times an hour, at least, for a full day, and blowing my nose and all that, so it wouldn't be a great show for me last week. So
that's the benefit for the radio listeners.
That's why they
don't have to see that.
So, yes, last weekend, blowing a lot. And so that was Saturday, and not only I was under the weather, but the weather outside was also under the weather, as we had our first significant snowfall of the season here in Brooks, with at least 10 centimeters of snow. Temperatures falling through the day on Saturday. It was absolutely perfect. We even had rain showers. It rained on Friday, and there's a little bit of instability as well. So we were thinking we might get a few sparks of lightning somewhere, and that happened near Kamloops last Friday. They got some thunder, some lightning, so it got a little exciting in the BC interior there, and we were hoping we'd get some of that, but energy to get any of that stuff to get going here in the southern parts of the province. But we got rain instead, and then that changed over to snow, ended up 10 centimeters, and the temperatures plummeted as we went throughout this past week here with overnight lows in the minus 30s. And wind chills between minus 43 to minus 23rd. Now, temperatures have improved through the day today with a little blast of snow moving through. So we've got another centimeter or two of snow on top of the 10 we had last weekend that didn't melt away at all this week. So it's still on the ground there. And we're going to start seeing a bit of a warming trend through the weekend. But before I get to that, I should also mention Manitoba. They've had some rough weather this winter, actually. So far this winter, Winnipeg has only been seen one day above the melting point. Every other day has been below. A lot of snowfall in Winnipeg. At least 156 centimeters of snow has fallen in Winnipeg this winter season, which makes it the third snowiest winter ever in the city of Winnipeg. So they're breaking records like crazy for snowfall in the Winnipeg area this winter season, plus with the cold air mass. And last weekend itself, they had at least 3 blizzards on, and things finally settled down, but it got cold, downright cold this week with daytime highs minus 20s, overnight lows minus 30s, and wind chills well in the minus 40s. And they've had a lot of sunshine this week, so they had a nice reprieve from the snow, but it's been downright cold. And now that pattern is starting to change again as we go into the weekend and through the beginning of next week here, where we do anticipate some milder. Will it be? All depends on the snowpack, because that will also lead to inversions. So that will mean some areas will stay below freezing while other areas get above freezing. So it's a tough temperature forecasting scenario that's setting up here. But we do have a couple clipper systems, one coming through on Monday in southern Manitoba. And then we've got to watch another 2 storm systems off the Pacific coast Tuesday. Snow for portions of southern Manitoba coming through Oregon into Idaho that will intensify and likely bring a significant snow event for the middle and towards the end of next week in southern portions of the prairies. So that could mean some big tough travels ahead, especially for the beginning of March, which means March coming in like a lion, if you believe in that stuff. In like a lion, out like a lamb, or in like a lamb, out like a lion kind of stuff. So looks like we're going to go kind of lioness here, deal with snow and more cold weather, especially for the latter stages of next. And by the way, speaking of March in Alberta, that is typically the snowiest month of the season for the province of Alberta. So we're right on cue for that.
Well, and that's much the case for us in Wells too, Pie in the Mountains and the Caribou Mountains, where February, March, that tends to be go time for snow, right? So when I was saying we have that return to sort of that that spring weather, that's reminiscent of the fall weather. It's the Pacific Ocean starts just throwing moisture towards the continent, and it's coming. Prince George, you're looking at -3 Saturday with a 60% chance of flurries at nighttime, -3 as well. So not a whole lot of fluctuation there. Sunday though, 2 degrees, -4 at night. That's not a whole lot of fluctuation either, I guess though. 40% chance of flurries. Monday going to warm up to 5 degrees. 30% chance of showers, -4 at night, 30% chance of flurries. Tuesday, 5 degrees again during the day, 30% chance of showers. Nighttime, -6, cloudy on Wednesday as well. So that's kind of how your week's going to start off, Prince George. Temperatures up and down. Today, myself, we leave camp, we go down 30 some odd kilometers with the truck, and then we get to where our snowmobiles are hidden. And then we get on the sleds, and then we ride for a long, long ways on swamps and all this. And then it was -22 when we left the truck this morning. It was absolutely brutal. And what kind of made it nice, though, was throughout the day, the sun came out, and it got so super beautifully warm, and it was clear out. And then we took a little sled ride about maybe half a kilometer up around the corner of this swamp, and we could see the Ulgacha Mountains. They're the former volcanoes. So the Ulgacha, the Itches, and then eventually it was like a hot spot. I've made a couple videos on my YouTube channel. You might find out about this if you look. But there was a hot spot in the earth that currently exists somewhere near Nazco, and it's made volcanoes over the years, over the last 500,000 years. So the Ulgacha Mountains were just popping, and it was one of the most, I felt so lucky to be there and not, say, in Ukraine or something like that. So I guess we'll talk to Gabriel Berardo quickly about Ontario weather, and then we'll go back to Peter and talk about because I know you got lots of snow going on in Ontario these days.
Well, it's not like a lot, 5 to 10 centimeters is on the way, 10 to 15 for of course areas that will be under the lake effect, close to Hamilton, Burlington, Oakville, kind of along the shores of Lake Ontario. Could be seeing the heavier snowfall, and yes, I have a driver's whatever it's called again, a driver's lesson tomorrow at about like 12:45, which will probably get canceled. Hopefully not, but it will probably will because of the snowfall. Because I mean, yeah, I don't want to drive in snowfall, and I
I do
mean,
it every day.
only in a lesson. We're gonna have to see what happens, but I might haven't really been focusing on the weather. Oh, look, we could just go straight to Pete because I got nothing else to say, guys. It's gonna get cold in Ontario. It's gonna get cold. Blah blah blah. Move on to Pete, or let's see what he has to say because I'm interested in what he has to say, not what I have to say.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
always interested in what you have to say, Gabriel. But yeah, definitely we have some world events going on, and so remind everybody, Peter, how you know Michael Sanikov, and just some of your connections with Ukraine, and maybe just what maybe he's experiencing. I know it's hard to speak for somebody else, and maybe not proper. So, but you were mentioning some of the things like having trouble getting gas, having trouble getting access to his own money, which seems crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. So how I know Michael is I met Michael in 2017 on a trip to Hong Kong. Michael is a major in linguistics and international. I forgot the exact degree, but it's some sort of international diplomacy type of degree that I got in international business, some hybrid type of degree. But he speaks Ukrainian fluently, Russian fluently, English fluently, and Chinese fluently. And then in the past 2 years, he also learned the Thai language. But I first met him in Hong Kong and at a blockchain meetup, and he was in Hong Kong to renew his visa for Shenzhen, China, and he had been working in Shenzhen, China, doing both import and export, importing dairy and other stuff like that from the Ukraine into China, as well as exporting stuff back, everything from phone accessories to all sorts of other stuff. And he went to that blockchain meetup because at that time in 2017, the Bitcoin price had been going up, and a lot of the computers for that sort of thing come from Shenzhen. So he had been getting orders for that. And he met me, and he didn't really have a solid friend or business associate from the United States that he really knew, because he's from Ukraine and had been living in China. So anyway, that's how I met him. And then I met up with him again later in 2017 in Hong Kong and Shenzhen again. And then later that year, he traveled with me to Amsterdam. He worked with me again on a blockchain startup remotely. We were having for a blockchain startup based in the United States, and he and I have been working together and been friends for the past few years, long story short. And one of the things was we were working together for making an LLC the other year, and I sort of got sidetracked. But part of his logic there was that if he could be a member partner of a United States LLC, he could possibly get a work visa to come stay in the United States. And I think part of the reason was these tensions between Ukraine and Russia. So he's always been exploring international opportunities for working abroad because that has been sort of a problem in Ukraine ongoing. But anyway, he's back in Kharkiv now and has been there for about past 6 months. And like I was saying, that is 20 miles from the border of Russia, and Kharkiv is the second most populated city in Ukraine, second to Kiev. I left off last time. I was mentioning that as of today, Russia basically gave Ukraine an ultimatum, Ukraine to surrender after they had just declared war on leaked from just days prior to that. They were just saying they're recognizing certain eastern regions of Ukraine as independent from Ukraine, and that escalated quickly to them attacking certain critical infrastructure across Ukraine, which was a much broader area than they were discussing just days ago. So there's a lot of uncertainty of what will happen next, and what I do know is that the people of Ukraine are very independently minded. There is a lot of mix between Russian and Ukrainian culture. They have very similar languages, so most people in Ukraine speak both Ukrainian and Russian. The languages aren't that different. They share the same alphabet. But for the most part, besides some groups in Ukraine, they are very not, they were not looking for unification with Russia. And it seems that Russia has a almost delusional mindset of some sort of former Soviet Union country reunification type of mindset going on. And I think they also just saw an opportunity. Ukraine is a pretty big landmass, like near the size of Poland, and it's pretty much a lot of the land between Russia and the Mediterranean Sea. So them taking Crimea a decade ago, I was hoping that would be the end of it, because Crimea Peninsula sticks out into their water route between Russia and the Mediterranean Sea. So they wanted to control that. Strategically, Russia wanted to control that, but I wasn't expecting them to try to go after the rest of the whole Ukraine. So it's a pretty disconcerting situation.
Everyone's heard Putin say that any country that tries to interfere or get involved is going to face historic consequences. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but he's basically making veiled nuclear war threats. So then the question is,
which isn't
how many
good.
times? Sorry, the question is, how many times can he keep making that threat and keep pushing that envelope further, right? So it's like, and now we have this appeasement going on, like, well, we don't want nuclear war. I guess we'll just put some sanctions on the guy. Realistically speaking, does it end at Ukraine? When it goes to the next place, is there similar justifications used for the expansion? And is there a similar threat being used? So if that's the case, at what point does everyone call on it and say, no, we're not going to allow this, and a major world war breaks out? How far will Russia go?
Exactly. Which is why it'd be critical if there could be some diplomatic route figured out sooner than later to stop that further expansion, because if they take all of Ukraine, then now suddenly they're neighbors with Poland and Lithuania and Georgia, and there's already been and then they also attacked Chernobyl, which is partially Belarus territory. So that is already really reckless. And in my mind too, I'm wondering what the people of Russia are thinking, because these harsh sanctions they had the opportunity with the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. They were going to be providing 70% of Germany's natural gas. And that really was an avenue for Russia to become more mainstream in the international economy. The Russian ruble has been withheld from the world's reserve currencies for a long time, and Russia has been sort of kept on a short leash for a reason. But Putin has totally ruined their prospects, trading countries in becoming a normal player in the international economy, which I really think is sabotaging the future for their future generations there. And that is a really reckless choice to make, and that's a really precarious situation for the United States, other European nations, the West in general, because if there's a confrontation involving other militaries outside of Ukraine, which is why I think there's been some hesitation from other countries besides Ukraine in regards to taking military time, turning a blind eye and be like, well, Ukraine's not our country, and allowing them to take that, then I think there's absolutely the possibility they'll continue. One of the countries on the border of Ukraine is Moldova, which is an extremely, I think they have the weakest economy out of all of the European countries. So that'd be a really easy one for Russia that doesn't stop. Is that's the troubling aspect of it, which is why I if they gain confidence that they can just get away with it, then I think that I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me strategically for Russia's long-term viability. I don't know who war would benefit. So it's a troubling situation
of China and Russia. To now, are we witnessing the rise of these two powers becoming greater than, say, the Western powers?
The combination of Russia and China is a much more, like you're saying, if you're talking about the outpacing or overshadowing the influence and power of Western countries, Russia alone, they do have like a huge nuclear stockpile, but their economy is, I think their economy is less than Italy's or something like that. So they're a huge landmass and they have a huge amount of military assets, but Russia's economy alone isn't on par with a lot of Western countries. However, if you combine that with China, the population of China and the resources of China and the GDP of China, then yeah, that's a concerning thing. And it seems like the West has been hesitant to put pressure on China in this situation, and China has been hesitant to put pressure on Russia, their neighbors, and also China wants to formally take back Taiwan, so they're not gonna step out of the way to stop Russia from taking back Ukraine, because then they'll look like hypocrites, because they're like, according to mainland China, the ROC, the Republic of China is the formal name of Taiwan, which differs from the People's Republic of China. So they're technically still two different countries, but in the eyes of people in mainland China, they're always been part of China. But if you ask someone from Taiwan, they would give you a different answer. So if there's some sort of alliance between Russia and China, then that really is I don't know. That's because of how tyrannical and authoritarian their governments are. It wouldn't be so ominous if they had more like freedom, more progressive governments, which is one of the frustrating parts about Ukraine, is that Putin's trying to paint Ukraine as a bunch of neo-Nazis, and there's those fringe elements in Ukraine. There's those fringe elements in Russia as well.
Yes.
So that's pretty hypocritical of him. But in reality, Ukraine's president is Jewish, and like they host a lot of exchange students from Nigeria. They're a fairly progressive country, and on a smaller scale, Kiev is almost like Eastern Europe's Silicon Valley. Like they're really top 20 of GDP in the world. They're really a modernizing, like progressive country in their own right. They have their own they have some problems, of course, but it is not just a blip on the radar in regards to this move by Russia. To
the story in Canada for the last number of weeks has been the Freedom Convoy. And there was some delusion that we are not a free country that people were sharing and willing to fight for. They drove their delusion across the country. You know, so if we got no borders in our country, you can drive from British Columbia to Ottawa. That's not a crime. And then they set themselves up with an occupation in downtown Ottawa for 3 weeks, disrupting business, disrupting economy, disrupting the borders. And after 3 weeks, finally, there was some police action taken, and some key organizers were arrested and now face some very serious charges, and I think are surprised to find out how serious they are. Meanwhile, in Russia, there's been a massive outbreak of anti-war sentiment that's going on, and it seems clear that this is Putin's war. It's not the Russian people's war. So in front of the Kremlin, there was large demonstrations that happened, and people were attacked by the police and straight up arrested, beaten. One of the images that was really great was someone had balloons in the color of the Ukrainian flag. You know, those like neon colors from the 1990s that Ukraine has for a flag, you know, the yellow and the blue. And he's got balloons that are yellow and blue. Yeah. And as the Russian police are dragging this guy into this bus, they take his balloons with them into the bus too, which I thought was, you know, a surreal image. But so, you know, we're under the delusion in Canada we're not a free country. You can seize your capital city for 3 weeks. Well, in Russia, that lasted 3 minutes. And I just want to put that out there as sort of to put things into context of what kind of a society we live in here, and actually how good we have it in Canada, and how lucky we are to not have missiles flying. You talk to the people about Ukraine, about freedom tonight, they're going to have very different answers than what the Canadian redneck right wing does. Obviously, I did not share very much enthusiasm for the Freedom Convoy that went through, because I knew exactly what kind of people were at the top of the organizing. And I did take some delight to hear that Pat King was temporarily denied bail, maybe fully denied bail on Tuesday, and was served with a $306 million lawsuit in the process. And now I've been a part of protests that shut down Ottawa before. We never got the lawsuit, although we did get tear gassed on the first day. So, I mean, you didn't think you were very free. You were freer than we were when we went and protested in Ottawa. So I just want to get your, if you have any knowledge on what's been going on with that Russian anti-war movement that seems to have broken out suddenly. It takes a lot of guts to protest in Russia.
Yeah, I saw videos. There are people out in decent numbers, and as you said, in some places they were taken down pretty violently, pretty quickly. And Russia has a very not good history of opposition candidates and politicians and activists winding up dead or in jail. So in comparison to the politics of the United States and Canada, it is a reminder of the amount of freedom that we do have. And honestly, a lot of what we see in the United States and Canada is drama and theatrics compared to what people in Russia and sometimes in China and some other places really face in regards to actual authoritarian regimes. So it's it's very fortunate that we live in the places that we do, and that the problems that we have here in the West are mostly they're very dramatized in regards to the reality. So I don't know. I think it's a good sign that the people of Russia are aware of what's going on, but there needs to be, I think it's time that there needs to be some sort of shift in their power structure, because I agree with you that it is Putin's war. I don't see it as being advantageous to Russia as a whole, Russia's economy, or the average person in Russia. So it's like something's got to give at a certain point where this blind allegiance to Putin should end. But at the same time, that's one of the problems with totalitarian regimes. And similar, if you see in China, everyone is just like there's always somebody higher up on the ladder. So when you have someone very authoritarian and brutal in charge, people will comply and be harsh just to make their higher ups happy. And I think that's what explains a lot of the way that Russia and China's governments work. So that's why it's so difficult to see a change, because if you resist at the lower levels, there's usually heavy backlash. So Western countries and European nations need to be really strategic in their response in a way that I think in terms of rhetoric, they need to make it clear to the Russian people that Putin is not acting in a way that is favorable for them as a nation, and they need reform there. But we're far from that in regards to where everything's at right now, unfortunately.
You're hearing the voice of Peter Galanko on the COMEDEOROLOGICAL report. It's your comedy weather show. We're not being very funny today, and that's tough kitty for you, Radio Face, that we're not in a funny mood. So you're hearing us on CKUW 95.9 FM and CFUR 88.7 FM in Prince George, Winnipeg, Prince George. Thank you all for tuning in. We still got a little bit of time left in the show. So I guess what's on my mind right now is that we're facing, as a civilization, humanity, we're facing a situation where our damage to the environment and to the planet Earth itself is becoming so grave and so severe that we may find ourselves very soon past the point of no return, and things may get very terrible down the road as climate change. And when I see people driving across the country, burning gas, woohoo and whining about their freedom, and when I see a monster who disguised himself so suave and smooth for so many years, but now we find out he's laid his cards down. We found out who the real Putin is, and he's threatening possible nuclear war if anyone gets involved. So it's like I see the problem that we're facing as a planet, as a species, and we're all in it together. And I don't understand how anybody can think these things anymore. And why are we not fighting about the real problem? The problem that's existential.
Well, that just
I don't have the answer to that, but bringing up the topic of CO2 and global warming, it seems like one of the reasons that Russia became so cocky is because their nuclear power plants, and people are worried about the environmental concerns of nuclear energy, but I think that's more sustainable. And if there's proper containment of nuclear waste, more environmentally friendly than the other alternatives. But I think that the energy is a major factor that is playing a role in this geopolitical problems, because of there's less leverage when countries don't have energy independence. So there needs to be that needs to be at the forefront, is both sustainable energy and national energy independence have leverage in these sort of situations, because that is part of the reason I think Putin feels like he has so much leverage to do what he wants.
As we inch closer to disaster climatically, we now inch closer to midnight on the old nuclear war clock.
Yeah. I mean, right? I mean, like, the world has several problems. I don't think that any of them are going to be handled anytime soon. And I mean, yes, look, it is a pretty negative take, but based on what's happening right now, right? You already knew how to, like, the war going on, like, right now. So, I mean, there's several problems that are, like, happening in the moment, and it is history that's kind of happening, like, right now, right? Like, I think that my father told me that he thought that he would never kind of, like, coming soon on what could happen. But I mean, it's just kind of nuts how this is a story that I'll probably get to tell my kids or my friends in the future about, right? I mean, like, you see, like, it's like, it's really just crazy, and it's like, it's just, I mean, yeah, I guess more than that, how so much problems are wrong and everything like that, how much
I'm sure, like, the last major European war must have really affected your family one way or the other. I don't know, what their role or participation was.
Think so.
Certainly for my family, my Dutch family, the last major war, it's like the anger and trauma of it. It's been passed down through the generations. Like I think the grandchildren and great grandchildren feel my grandparents, the anger they feel about or must have felt, or the brokenheartedness. I don't think that people in that generation knew how to explain these things, right? Frankie, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think we're going to look at climate change together as a species, or are we going to devolve into war and fighting over what's left?
That means that one half of the world is interested in the species and climate. Other half of the world is more interested in World War III.
Yeah, it seems like that, right? Everyone's saying they're surprised that we're coming to this point again. I'm not. I've my whole life, and I felt like that way when COVID started. Like my whole life, I've been waiting for civilization to start feeding on itself and turning against each other. The calamity was coming. I felt it on the wall from the time I was young. And maybe it's because I grew up in a family that was affected by the war, and I grew up poor, that I didn't have a very good. And then growing up rurally and driving into Toronto as a very small kid and seeing the big city for the first time and just going, what the heck? Like, people live here? What are they going to do when the power goes out? I just couldn't understand. Like, where do they get their firewood? Like, I couldn't believe the way that, especially in the 80s, the way that Toronto just sprawled. It was amazing. The small city that it went from when I first started seeing Toronto in the early 80s to like Toronto that I saw the last time I landed in the airplane. It's like two different places. Not downtown Toronto. That's mostly the same. It's still pretty cool. But I kept seeing the growth of, where does Toronto end? Eventually it's going to be to the North Pole at the rate it's growing. I remember thinking, eventually Toronto's going to take over the whole country. It's just going to be one big Toronto. That's what cities are doing. That's what humanity seems to be doing. Where does it end? I just keep asking that question.
Well,
I've always figured it's going to end bad.
Pricing went up. Like, look, we don't live in a perfect world, and like, there's nothing perfect about ours.
We live in a great world, but we don't share it with a perfect species.
Now it's not that much of
the planet's awesome. Where I was today, the world is great.
There's unlimited potential for good.
It's humanity. They're the problem. Look at yourselves, humans. You're crazy.
Well,
You've gone crazy. Frankie, have humans gone crazy? Or is it just me?
really, really, really crazy guy.
You're a good example there.
Yeah, I am.
Involved with Russia, and same with those Middle Eastern countries might get involved. Taliban might get involved in that.
Mostly. China too, mostly.
I think the big question is, what's going to happen to Frankie's world tour if World War III breaks out?
Not good.
Not good for Frankie's tour.
It's going to stop because of Frankie. That's why he's going on tour. It's going to stop.
That means North America and South America, both continents, will not be involved in World War III.
I think Frankie's going to be like Bill and Ted. He's going to make a video so great that it will bring peace to humanity. Guy tries to eat 50 pieces of peace.
Piece of peace. Nice one.
What happens if they form a bubble during World War III? North American, South American bubble. That means there'll be Western Hemisphere bubble. What does that mean?
Means that nothing could impact us. That's what it means.
Well, what if
it's a huge bubble, right?
What if Oshawa gets hit by a nuclear bomb?
Not good. That can affect the whole planet.
What happens if the bombs start flying? What's that going to do to weather, Frankie?
That's nuclear can affect the weather all over the world.
Nuclear winter.
That'll be horrible. Like including you're having having some weather events too. And what would be the worst scenario is a overseas war. We don't want that to happen. Trust me. You don't want a overseas war to happen.
And the other half of the world, like Middle Eastern countries, Russia, China, North Korea, they want a war.
Yeah.
Well, I think that Putin wants the war the most currently right now. It only takes one guy to start it all. It takes that one guy. It's only that one guy. That's all it takes. That one person that just chooses that it starts.
Like a bar fight.
Yeah. All right. Once it starts, it really starts. Like I'm gonna let you could technically go like back, but at like this point, I don't think that Putin wants to go back. I think he's
sort of past the point of no return.
Yeah.
No, you commit to this and then you do it. You don't. That's why sanctions aren't going to do anything, because he's gone in. So he's not going to be like, oh, wait a second, right? Some sanctions. Hey, everybody, turn around and sorry about those things we just blew up. You can have them back. That's not going to happen.
It doesn't work like that.
So sanctions are going to do much.
They made statements saying that while it's obviously an act of Russian aggression, they were saying it was for their safety and national security to take out some of Ukraine's military stuff. So at first I was like, oh, hopefully that could give them an exit where they could be like, okay, we'll stop now. We were just making sure, even though there was no real threat of attack on Russia by Ukraine, they wouldn't have initiated an attack on Russia. But like that would be their one out if they wanted to try to claim that they declared full on war. So that's not and then their only option they're putting on the table is for Ukraine as an entire country to surrender. So it's not escalated quickly.
Very, very, very fast. It all just started last night.
It's the schoolyard bully thing that happens too, where the bully picks on you for years. He like pushes you in the ground. He takes your money. What else does he do? He like, I don't know because I didn't get bullied a whole lot, but maybe you guys know. The bullies are bad, right? And so eventually,
I don't.
You get enough of it. Eventually, I did have a couple bully experiences, and what happened to me was I took it for quite a while because I just don't care. Like even as a high school student, it's like, okay, you want to be a jerk to me? That's whatever. And then finally, like it got bad enough that one day I punched the bully in the face. Felt good. Just friggin' smoked him, and he was dumbfounded. He was stuttering, and then that he's like, "Do you want to dance?" And I was like. So like the next week, I happened to bump into the same guy at a party, and he's feeding me beer, and like we were best friends. So I didn't get it. The schoolyard bully, where a Palestinian child in Gaza throws a rock at a tank, so some Apache attack helicopters go and blow up his school. And that's kind of how I liken Putin's worry about Ukraine. And what was Ukraine going to do to Russia? Throw a rock at a tank?
Decade has been on Ukrainian soil. It's not like they've gone over on Russian territory and started potting over there. No, Russia took Crimea and 2 other territories, and it was the actual Russian or Ukrainian military. The Russian nationalists were funded by Russia, but it was isolated to those specific regions and not the rest of the Ukraine, and it was just a bunch of excuses from Putin there. So
yeah.
Well, people forget this isn't the first time.
But I think Europe and the United States have been too naive. In
the people of Chechnya will tell you. This isn't a new thing. Sorry, I'm lagging here, so I thought you were done.
Just saying.
Interrupting you. The people of Chechnya, the kind of the misconception is like, well, Russia started to get kind of aggressive this last few years, and they annexed Crimea. And people forget like a brutal war happened in Chechnya, and Grozny was destroyed into the backwater. And now when you Wikipedia Grozny, it says a city in Russia, right? So this was the move to start taking back what was lost in the USSR began back in the late 90s, 96 or 95. I think that war already began, right? So it started with the easiest target. And the fact, the Chechens had no organized military necessarily to combat. And a very lengthy guerrilla war took place in which there was one of the tactics they used eventually was terrorist attacks in Russia. And now I see that weapons are being distributed around to basically anybody who wants to fight in Ukraine. if you want to stay and fight, we'll give you a gun is more or less what's going on here. So, I mean, Russia may be in for it may not go the way they're hoping. It may take a long time to actually quell resistance, and it may come at great cost to both sides.
They're not gonna give up easy. They're not gonna give up easy. And if Russia doesn't de-escalate, it's just gonna be a bloody mess. And hopefully Michael will be all right and will be able to join us another week because he'll be able to tell you more about Chechnya and stuff like that, because I know he's gone to Chechnya and done business there, so he's probably an encyclopedia of all that sort of history. But anyway,
so we are coming close to the end of the hour.
My social media, my Twitter is at Frankie McD. My Facebook is Frankie MacDonald. My Instagram is Frankie McD. 1984. My YouTube channel is Dogs and Wolves.
And you've been listening to the Comediorological Report. I'm Joey Only, the Caribou Weather Dude out here. I'm 200 kilometers west of Quesnel in a logging camp. So the closest community of any kind is about 85 kilometers of reserve. We're out here, and the fact that there's internet at all is amazing. It's a metered network here at camp, unfortunately. So what happens is if someone's using a microwave nearby or texting someone on their Facebook Messenger or whatever, it seems to affect my internet usage here. So the show drags and grinds, and I'm not getting your faces in the video, and it's too bad. But we only have a couple weeks left of work out here in the Chilcotin Wilderness. So I'll probably be home in 2 weeks' time making episodes with the help of quality internet. So as I was saying, I'm Joey Only, the Caribou Weather Dude. Comediorological Report, CKUW 95.9 FM, CFUR 88.7 FM. That's Winnipeg and Prince George. Tonight we had largely Peter Galanko talking about Ukraine. We also were, of course, joined always by Frankie MacDonald, the world-famous weatherman from Sidney, Nova Scotia, our Western Canada weather expert, Brandon Houck from 105.7 FM, the country station in Brooks, Alberta, and Gabriel Berardo, the rapping weatherman, joining us from Southern Ontario. Good to see all of you people. We're all such bizarre, unique specimens. I think we're beautiful. I think I like us, you know, and hopefully all of you people out there in Radio Land will like us too and tune in next week. We'll be back for one more episode and one more after that. Until then, bye for now.